Okay, ED2 time. Where do we want to start with this? We can go through the preset first. There's some points there that help. So what's different here is there's a specific kind of weaponry that works in this dungeon. You can use the Pterosaur Maul. That will work on boss number 2 and 3, but you can also use Dragonbane. Dragonbane is kind of used the same way as the Pterosaur Maul is, or the two-hand variant is. If you cast a damage over time ability like a Barge Bleed Assault, for example, you would do that with a Dragonbane weapon. And then you put your T92, so your T90s on to get the combined damage, like you get the actual damage boost on top of the weapons that you're wielding. Whereas if you do it the other way around, you will cast something with the T90 weapon, put on the Dragonbane weapon, that will turn into tier 80 damage, which you don't want. So it's a little bit fiddly about the order when you use this, but if you have used the Pterosaur Maul, that will be the exact same thing. There is the addition of a Dragonbane main hand longsword for some other abilities, like when you're doing a flurry at the end of a circ that isn't being bled like it's being channeled normally, then you would rather put this on than the main hand Khopesh. But I'm going to try to leave that out and just keep it reasonably simple, since this is a guide and not a display case. The stuff that I have on me is that I'm not using my trim masterwork legs. I'm using a pair of regular masterwork legs that I have with Genocidal and Dragon Slayer. I have a task of dragons, just general dragons, so celestial dragons, black dragons, and gemstone dragons in this case, will apply to all 3 bosses and most of the mobs in this dungeon. This is pretty big. The Dragon Slayer Sigil is also useful. And if you have a Seren Godbow, this is a decent place to bring that. Apart from that, this normal stuff: Dominion Mines, Vulnerability Bombs, my dual wields, my 2 hands, my flank, my Ring of Death in this case, because of Astellarn, and this grave is pretty costly. It could obviously be Asylum Surgeon as well, doesn't really make a huge difference, other than the death cost. Then, yeah. That's pretty much it, I think. If you wanna, you can bring the Lucky Charms as well to boost your common drops. They make a significant difference in this dungeon because the common drops here are so terrible. Oh yeah, if you have a Grim, using it in ED2 is probably the best place in the game, damage-wise. Like, the damage reward for using Grimoire instead of any other pocket slot, because of the raised cap, is immense, because you have so many different damage boosts that you can stack up on here from the perk, the Sigil, and your Dragonbane weapons, and your Slayer task, and your Genocidal. It all adds up to insane amounts of damage, which you will see when I do some of the bosses here. Okay, the first run I forgot to point out a couple of details, so I'm just going to redo the entire thing. First room here, there's 6 jellies. You want to kill 4 of them to open up the barrier. These guys are going to multiply, and you only want to bother killing the ones that are a slightly paler shade of green. It doesn't matter if the other ones die, but those are not the ones that need to die for the barrier to open. It's just clones. So after the 4th one is dead, run back up the ramp or the stairways, go out, go back in. The room is going to be cleared and you don't have to deal with the jellies henceforth. It's a lot nicer, otherwise they're just going to follow you forever, and you either need to kill them or you need to trap them behind other mobs. Both require much more effort than just doing that. Barge this dragon, that one has to die, then go over to these 2. Tuska's Wrath works on the mobs, not the bosses, if you have a task here, so it's a free 15k every 2 minutes. It's kind of nice. Then for this next room, just Circ, a Dram Pop, Barge 1 Dragon, bleed him to death with an ability, go for the others, AoE those. Then on this bridge, doesn't really matter where you stand so long as you're reasonably central in the middle of all this. Put your scythe on, do a meteor strike, target cycle, hurricane, target cycle again, and quake. That should be it. In this room, you need to kill 2 mobs plus that dragon. 2 mobs that are easiest to deal with are the animated books. They have lower HP and they're easy to spot in the middle of all this. So just go for the 2 books and then go for the dragon. Save yourself some agony by going on the opposite side of this dragon from the jellies. And then just block them while you're doing the dragon so you don't take unnecessary damage from that. Go in here, go to the deeper end, plant a CGS if you have one. Start with the 2 dragons in the back, save that one for last. The reason for that is that he blocks these mobs from coming and just destroying you. Keep your stuns handy, obviously. Whenever this red message appears, you gotta stun the dragons, so don't waste them. And then when that dragon dies, blade a dive over here so you get a bit of a head start. Try to kill this guy. Then ideally this dragon is going to stand there and block all the mobs from coming down the stairs. This doesn't always happen, and if it doesn't, all you gotta do is really just go out and, you know, re-enter the dungeon, pretty much. Now that it did happen, I don't have to do that, and I'm not gonna bother doing a Dragon Battle Axe spec on Astellarn. So the way Astellarn works is that you have to deal damage to him to the point of 190k life points. When you hit 190k, he's going to face, become damage immune, and you need to start worrying about some of the mechanics to unlock the ability to deal damage to him again by the white hole mechanic. So what you want to do now is a short burst of damage and not something continuous, or there's no like big bleeds or anything. You have, I think it's 11 seconds give or take most of the time before he starts becoming damage immune. Because of the white hole giving you a damage boost at the end there, I am going to circ the start and then use my CGS in the white hole, and it will be very obvious why. So Vuln the boss, circ, a dram pot, wait a little bit, then during the second attack, bleed an assault and do a hurricane. Probably put your Grim on as well, don't stand it without it. Plant the black hole on one of the short sides in melee distance. Then go off. When it turns white, barge back in. Bleed an assault. Cancel a flurry. Channel a destroy. And then finish with either Dragon Claws or Saren Godbow. And that's Astellarn. It's not a difficult fight. 57 seconds is extremely terrible. You'll realize this as you do a couple of spawns, that it's obviously everything is RNG related to some extent, but this one is extremely so. The timing is pretty sensitive to be able to overface him and do something like this kill here. So what's happening here is a much bigger overface. I'm going to try to pass that 190k threshold as much as I can, so I get less damage to deal at the end, and by that cutting my timer down. This is obviously a preloaded DS as well, but being able to stack as much damage as I can in between 2 of his auto attacks here allows me to pass that threshold a little bit further than I did previously. So I'm getting it down to, I think, about 115k or 110 somewhere on this video. And then just deal with mechanics normally. And one thing that also differs in this kill contra the one that I did on the full run is that the neutron star is spawning somewhere outside of the black hole So I have to actually lure it in, which you do most of the time. It will drag slowly towards you. In this case, I'm just tanking the black hole damage because I wanted to get ahead on my DPS, then finish the kill with another thresh stack. But the most important thing is just, unless you're going for a specific personal record or one of the tag requirements or something, to just keep an idea of what mechanics are going to come next and how to deal with them. So for this bit, go to this specific square here down by exactly where this wall is cut up, these two rocks. Stand there, bladed dive to the middle, and then one tick search. That way, you go across this entire area and the spiders are not going to see you. Provided you successfully one tick that, you can stand in between this little, or like behind this little wall, and just deal with these two. Scythe, helpful here, so you don't have to walk out. Otherwise those spiders are going to follow you around the dungeon. They don't deal a ton of damage, but they do eat some armor charges if you're not using, like Trim Masterwork obviously doesn't degrade in this dungeon, but some other armors do. So you'd have to keep them behind everything, just like go with the mobs that are in front first and let these other ones block the spiders, similar to how I did with the jellies. But if you just one tick search past them there, then you don't have to worry about them at all. It's much easier. These black dragons all have to die. There's no way around it. Just, mindlessly hack away at them, really. If you finish this room, the one that I'm in now, with 100% adrenaline, your Adram potion from Astellarn should be off cooldown again. So you could Zerk Adren pot and go into the next one and deal a really fat amount of damage. Clears it out a little bit quicker. So barge one of the central ones. Bleed one off to the side and go in the middle of this and just AoE. So that's 4 out of 6. When you're doing the strike arms, try to remember that you don't want to be switching to the Dragon Bane weapons if you have those. You gotta use normal ones on these, otherwise you'd be doing these with tier 80 damage. Go in here, plant a CGS somewhere between the first 3 dragons and just AoE them. Try to finish this room with 100% Adren in case that mini-boss is not there. He's not always there. When he is, he's kind of a free DPS dummy that you can use to build Adren and do a DBA spec before you run into Verak Lith. If he's not, then either drop a normal dummy or just finish on 100%, skip the DBA, it's kind of up to you. So Verak Lith, I will be praying deflect melee, since I'll be in melee distance. When you run away from him and get out of melee distance, you want to be praying deflect mage, and there's one specific prayer switch that you need to do during the fight, which will be extremely evident when I do it. Otherwise, Verak Lith is mainly just a massive damage test. The quicker you, or the more damage you deal, the quicker it is and the easier the boss becomes. So Circ, throw your Wall Bomb, bleed your Assault, use the Dragon Slayer Sigil. Then at the end of this Circ rotation, there's going to be that red message, and a Spire will appear, and the boss becomes damage immune. Dragonbane weapons don't work on this, so use your regular T90 or T92, depending on what you bring. After that, stack all your beads on Verak Lith, your Dismember, your Slaughter, and your Blood Tendrils. Step off the boss, anticipate, drop your CGS. Tank that bomb, there's no reason to deal with it. Just carry on doing damage to the boss. Now there will be another Spire. Finish the Spire at 100% Adrenaline, because you want to Circ when you're done with it. Step off, throw another Von Bomb. Circ again, watch out for that red line. Bleed one ability, channel the other normally. And just try to finish the boss. So that's Verak Lith. It's not crazy complicated. It's most, oh wow, that was a bit of a troll. It's mostly about being able to deal enough damage to just push through it quickly. The faster you do it, the less mechanics you experience, and the easier the boss becomes. Go to this chest, teleport to option number 4. Reload your preset, because you're going to need some food for the next bit. Then go into the middle of this and drop a CGS. This is one place you can use your Dominion Mines if you wanna. Be a little bit mindful about these guys' special attacks. They do kind of hurt, especially if you're soul splitting. You can pray mage for this as well. But yeah, just try to stay moving if you can't see the ground, otherwise look at the ground and just move away from the specs. I think most people have killed these somehow, either in here or at Karamja. The 4 that's closer to the barrier need to die. Barrier opens, you run up the stairs and you deal with these 2. Go through that. You can Bladed Dive Surge 1 tick across that chasm if you want to. It's not a massive thing, but it looks kind of cool. Kill these 2. Ignore the Hydrix Dragons. Just be wary about where they are. The spec can eat your adrenaline up and will decrease the rate of which you gain adrenaline for 20 seconds afterwards, which is extremely annoying, just really cumbersome trying to deal with the other mobs. And then the final 2. After these, it's up to you if you want to go straight in for the fight or if you want to go out and charge a Dragon Battle Axe on a dummy or on the BVM up crystal. I'm gonna do it on a dummy. So when these 2 are cleared and this barrier opens up, just teleport and ignore the Hydrix Dragons. So Blackstone Dragon can be done a ton of different ways. I'm going to try to get a clean one that isn't unnecessarily complicated. Out of the different rotations, the one that I'm showing you now is probably the one that's the easiest to learn when you're trying to do this well. Just need my natural instinct to come off, but actually it doesn't matter. Screw it. Meteor Strike. I'm going to pre-build with the Dragon Battle Axe just to get some extra juice in the beginning of this fight. DPS is really key here. The more you can push in short bursts, the easier this whole thing becomes, because it's essentially just 3 massive circ rotations and then a bunch of shit in between. So the first thing I'm going to do when I go in here is circ and a Drem Pot. or I'll get a Relentless proc. That's also fine. Move away when he says I've watched you. 520k he's going to face. Put a mobile switch on. Barge this hand and drop 2 mines. Then as soon as you start taking typeless damage, move away. These hands don't suffer the effect of the Dragonbane weapons, by the way, so you want to be using your regular T90s or T92s for these. Then for each subsequent hand, put your mobile switch on, barge it, bleed 1 threshold, mind your footing so you don't get the hand line on you, and then channel another threshold. Good to know is that these hands are synchronized, so when one of them slams out the cloud, the other one does as well. At the end of this hand, do a Natural Instinct. Try to finish it with 100% Adren, or at least very near it. Then Revolve the Dragon, Circ, Barge. Bleed your Assault. At this point, use your Dragon Slayer Sigil again. Then in my case, I'm going to Dragon Claw from behind here because I think it's fun. You can really do that however you want. All you need to do is bring the dragon down to 260k. That way, that's going to face him and move him on to the next bit. So finish that with a Seren Godbow. That could be anything. That could be a CGS, that could be a Godbow, that could be a set of Dragon Daggers, whatever the fuck, really. Just, bring it down to 260k. During that, he's going to start jumping around. There's not a lot that you can do here. I'm putting on my Godbow because it's a long-reach weapon that doesn't use ammunition, so it's just way easier to keep my Adren going. You can run around and just stall it too. It's really, really up to you. You can also Dragon Battle Axe during this if you want some extra push for the final bit. You can Natural Instinct during this. If you didn't do it on the last hand, you could do a bunch of different pre-building. I'm going to do nothing. So I have my Adren Potion, that's all I really care about. Throw a One Bomb under him. Then when he says show me the light, it's go time again. So standard circ rotation. Your sigil should be ready again, so you can use it a third time here. That time I used my Dragon Claws again. And a Seren Godbow. That should mostly be it for the dragon. Yeah, there we go. So that was 349. That is okay. It's not fantastic, but it's decent enough to be within reach of what I consider to be the specialist criteria for the tag. I set the budget allocation for this boss at 345, and honestly, I think even though that may sound a little bit steep, anyone who does this, copies that rotation that I just did right now, and then either improves upon it, tweaks it a little bit, or just learns it well enough to get a good kill, is going to have that 345 in the bag. So that is ED2. I don't really know what to say about it, apart from everything I just did. Abuse this as much as you can for Slayer XP. It is absolutely fucking ungodly XP. I did my final stretch here. I did most of my 120 here as well, but I did 120 to 200 million Slayer in here. Just repeating dragon tasks from the Anachronia Master, and it is absolutely disgusting. Money-wise, it's not great. The codices do kind of add up. They are rare enough for it to be demoralizing and annoying at 1 in 100 per boss, but you know, it's fun. It's also really good practice DPS wise. So I'll see you in ED3.